Hello everyone, my name is Kit again. In this video I'm going to talk about how you can edit your portrait pictures on your phone and how is it different from editing any other type of picture. In this video I'm going to use Adobe Lightroom and one other app which I'm going to talk about later. So let's get right into it. So this is a picture of a friend which was taken on OnePlus 7T, and as you can see the subject in this picture is a little dark. So I'll start off with editing the lights. I'll increase the shadows first and then I'll increase highlights just a little bit, and same with whites. And the blacks should be decreased very less in portraits, and the contrast should also be increased carefully since the faces tend to look weird if the contrast is too high. So I'll increase it just slightly, maybe just a little bit of exposure. And if you don't know how these sliders work, then I have explained them in my previous IGTV video, so you can refer to that for more details on how the sliders work. Also, the two most important things in editing a portrait picture is the skin tone, that is the color of the orange and the yellows, and the second thing is the texture of the skin. So to improve the color of the skin, I'm going to decrease the temperature just a little bit, and then I generally tend to increase vibrance and decrease saturation just a little bit to make the colors in the picture a bit more even. Now I'll go to the mix panel to edit individual colors, but the most important thing about mix panel is that individual colors depends on individual pictures, so make sure that you adjust it according to your picture. So in this case the hue and the saturation of the red color looks fine, but I'll increase the luminance so that the darker parts of the skin which tend to be on the red side of the color can be a bit more brighter. So generally what I do is I increase the hue of orange and decrease the hue of yellow, which makes the orange and yellow balance pretty well, and so the picture is neither too orange or too yellow. So I'll decrease the saturation of the orange a little bit so that the skin is not too oversaturated, and increase the luminance. But make sure that you take time, especially in the beginning, so that the skin tones look perfect. Then I'll increase the saturation of the yellow just a little bit and the luminance as well. Then I go to the greens. What I'll do in greens is I increase the hue so that the greens and yellows do not merge, and then I decrease the saturation and luminance so that the background is a bit more separated from the subject. Then I'll go to blue and decrease the saturation and luminance so that the background is a bit more darker than our subject. Then I'll click on OK and I'll move on to the effects panel. So in effects panel we have clarity and texture, both of which play an important part in making sure that the texture of the skin is right. If I increase the clarity a lot, it makes the picture very contrasty and the skin looks really weird. And to tackle that, I generally tend to decrease the texture and clarity. Now you'll wonder that will decrease the sharpness, but I'll come to sharpness later so that the picture looks tack sharp. I'll increase the dehaze just a little bit to make the picture a bit more contrasty. In this case, I'll use a strong vignette so that the subject is a bit more in focus. I'll decrease the midpoint so that the vignette comes a little more inside the picture, and increase the feather to make it more subtle. I can talk about vignette in a separate video since I don't want to make this video too long, so I'll skip that for now. And then I go to split toning. I have never talked about split toning before, but split toning is basically filling a particular color in the highlights or the shadows of an image. Then I go to sharpness and I increase the sharpness to around 65. I increase the radius and detail a little bit as well, since that gives the skin a bit more texture and that looks good. But remember, do not overdo it. Then I again come to the light panel and I select the curve. I know curves can be a bit intimidating, but just follow me on this. Just make a shape similar to this, and it will work in 85% of your images. But if you want to understand curves in a bit more detail, I can make a separate video, or you can refer to any YouTube video for how curves work. One other important thing is to use radial filters in your portraits to make sure that the attention goes on your subject and the face. So in this case, I'll choose the selective edits option. Then I'll go to add and select a radial filter. I'll make my first radial filter around the face of my subject, and I'll increase the exposure just a little bit to make sure that the face is highlighted. Then I'll make another radial filter across the whole body of my subject, and I'll increase the temperature just a little bit, since in most of the portraits the subject tends to be a bit more yellow or warm and the background tends to be a bit more blue or cooler. Then I'll make another radial filter which will be the size of my subject, but I'll press and hold it and press on invert. Then you can see that everything except the subject is selected. So I'll decrease the exposure and the contrast a bit so that more focus goes on our subject. I'll also decrease the temperature a little bit so as to create a color contrast between the subject and the background. Then I'll select the brush selective tool and I'll paint on the hair. Then I increase the highlights for the hair and I increase the clarity as well so that the hair stand out a bit more. Also, one more thing that I'd like to point out is the part of the face which is near the tree is a bit more darker. So I'll create a brush and increase the shadows so as it matches the rest of the face. I feel that this image is more or less complete here, so I'll just go to save to device and save it at the maximum quality possible. So now I'll move to an app which is known as Lens Distortion. It is also available on the Play Store for free. In this app you can basically add light leaks and other kind of overlays pretty easily on your mobile phone. So I'll choose this overlay for our case, just tap on it and it gets automatically selected, and make sure that you position it from the direction from which light is coming from. You can adjust a lot of parameters here. So I'll just change the color a little bit and the saturation. maybe a little bit brightness as well, and that's it. I just click on here and click save image. So finally we have this as the before and this as the after. Now I'll quickly take another image to explain why I did particular edits to a different kind of image. So as you can see that the light is a bit more harsh on the face of a model here. So in those cases where the light is really harsh on the face of the model, you need to decrease the contrast. Then I've made some basic light adjustment and I have used a similar kind of curve in this picture as well. Then I go to the color section and you can see that the temperature I have decreased again. And then I go to the mix panel and you can see similar sort of edits for this picture as well. I have increased the hue for orange and decreased the hue for yellow. I have decreased the saturation for orange and increased the luminance for it as well. And I have increased the saturation and luminance for yellow. For the greens, I have done a similar kind of edit as well. Then I go to clarity and you can see I have decreased the clarity and texture, increased the dehaze, decreased the vignette. And for sharpening, I have increased the sharpening, increased the radius, increased the detail. And if I go to split toning, I have increased the yellow color in highlights and blue color in shadows. And when I go to selective edit, I have made a mask to increase the exposure on the face and created an inverted mask to decrease the temperature around our model. And I have also created a brush around the hair and increased the highlights and clarity to give a bit more shape to the hair. That's it that I have done for this image, and this is the before and this is the after. A very quick edit if you have done this a couple of times and you'll see better results for sure. And that's it for this video, guys. If you think you have learned even a single thing from this video, make sure you share this video with at least 2 of your friends. Comment down below and tell me what you learned from this video and what you did not understand so that I can cover them in my next videos. Make sure you drop a like before leaving and do follow for more such videos. Till then, thank you for watching. Goodbye.